Hello, this is Science for Cycle 3, Week 5. This week we'll be talking about a couple of different senses that God has given us to be able to observe the world around us and appreciate all that He's given us. So I'd invite you to again take some time to read through that Bible verse at the top of your lesson for your students and really take the time to ask them how they've experienced God's goodness in the world around them. So whether that be through the ways that God has provided for them or blessed them and their families, or ways that they experience His goodness through their senses, through the way that He's made the world around them, the things they taste and the things they see and touch and smell and hear in the world around them. So take some time for that, and then take some time to review your scientific method song and those parts of the scientific method, and then we'll move into our experiment. So the first sense that we're going to talk about in our experiment today is the sense of touch. So emphasize that God has given us touch actually as a blessing and a protection. So there will be a diagram of the different layers of our skin in your lesson plan, and you can review, as we learned a couple weeks ago when we talked about fingerprints, that we have on our epidermis is our outer layer of skin, and then below that is our dermis. And God has provided us with different sensory nerves within our skin so that we can feel sensations like pain or heat or different types of touch. All these are transmitted from our nerves to our brain so that we can interpret those things. And again, they can be pleasurable or enjoyable, like somebody scratching your back, or they could be things that signal that pain is near. So if you touch a hot stove, the sense of touch is actually protective because it tells you right away through those sensory nerves that you better get your fingers off the stove. So our experiment today, we're going to look at how our sense of touch is different in different parts of our body. And specifically, we're going to look at our hands and arms. And so have your class kind of take a vote, maybe show them your hand and arm, and they can talk about where they think that your skin is most sensitive to touch, or maybe they think it's going to be the same all throughout your hand and arm. And then what your experiment is going to be, you can start with maybe one student, or you can start by just pairing students up, maybe for older classes. And what you're going to do is one student is going to lay their hand palm up on the table, and the second student, as the first student closes their eyes, the second student is going to touch that student's forearm up here with the tips of two pencils that are taped together. So they should be taped together so that their points come to the same point, so that they can both touch at the same time. So that second student, while the first student closes his or her eyes, that second student is going to touch the forearm with those pencils at points at the same time. And what's true is that you'll find that when you touch your forearm with those pencil points, you just feel 1 point, because your sensory nerves in that area of your skin are not as, there aren't as many of them. They're not as sensitive. But then after doing that and asking the student how many points he or she felt, and he or she will likely say 1 unless they're cheating and they saw the two pencils taped together already. Then the second point that we should touch is the tip of the thumb, which is very sensitive to touch. And so then ask how many points the student feels when his or her thumb is touched by those pencils, and he or she will distinctly feel 2 points. So you can have kids partner up, or you can do one student at a time, maybe for younger classes or whatever might work best for you. But you can have them, again, touch here first, touch here, and then you could even do the palm of the hand, the different fingertips. Just see if there's different sensitivities. I would encourage you to probably just stick with the hand and the forearm rather than trying anywhere else, just so it doesn't get out of hand. But then you can talk through your observations and results. So again, our skin is more sensitive to touch on our fingertips than on our forearms. And there are certain parts of the body that are very sensitive to touch and certain parts that are much less sensitive to touch. And God has given us that on purpose. Our fingertips are much more useful for touching things. We can feel very small ridges and changes in surfaces that we're touching in comparison to other parts of our body that we don't use as frequently for touch. So you can review that God has blessed us with that sense of touch for our protection as well as our enjoyment. And He designed us on purpose so that some parts of our skin are more sensitive to touch than others. Then we will move into our second experiment. So our second experiment has to do with the senses of both smell and taste. So our question is, how does our sense of smell affect our sense of taste? And there's some great diagrams actually in your lesson plan. One that shows the different senses, the different tastes that we are able to taste with our tongues. So our tongues are actually pretty limited in taste. There are four main tastes that we can taste, and those are sweet, salty, bitter, and sour. So those are tasted in different regions of our tongue. The rest of the abundance of flavors that we are able to experience is actually by combining the senses of smell and taste together. So that's what we're going to look into today. There's a great picture of what's going on when we are tasting food, but we are also smelling the molecules from the food that enter and then both come to our pharynx where they can be sensed. Into where the senses can be transmitted to our brain through our nerve cells, and so it shows how our smell is connected to our sense of taste. And you can also discuss with kids, maybe they've had a cold before, or maybe when they don't like to eat their broccoli, they plug their nose. When your nose is plugged, food is going to taste much different, and you're going to have a much more limited abundance of flavors to be able to taste because you don't get the benefit of having smell with taste. So this experiment is really simple. Each kid is going to get an apple slice, and I'd encourage you to have them take a bite of their apple right away, taste it, make observations about its flavor. Does it taste like an apple? Yep, tastes pretty much like an apple. The second part of your experiment, you're going to give each student a cotton ball. I've got these really tiny ones that work really great for this. And you are going to use an eyedropper to put a little bit of vanilla on that cotton ball. I'm just going to dip it right now because I'm limited in number of hands. So you're going to have just a little bit of vanilla extract on that cotton ball. And then for the second bite of apple that they take, they are actually going to hold the cotton ball near but not touching their noses as they take a bite of apple. And what they should notice is that this pretty significantly changes the way that we experience or sense the taste of that apple. And it demonstrates for us how our sense of smell is connected with our sense of taste and how those two are important to work together. And again, you can review how that works and review that our senses of smell and taste are a huge blessing that are given to us by God, and that He designed us in such an amazing way so that those senses can work together to give a huge variety of experiences that we get to enjoy that He created for us. Lastly, if you have extra time, I will send along just some small containers with different items that kids can try smelling. So this is really just kind of a smell experiment where kids can smell some coffee or some cinnamon or some lemon juice and see if they can identify what they are. So have fun with that. You can use it in whatever way you want. If you want to let moms maybe pass them around and have people vote on them, or whatever way you want to use them, feel free. But those will be there for if you have extra time as well. And that is it. Thank you.